All creatures of our God and King, lift up your voices. Let us sing. Alleluia, alleluia. Please be seated. I found her on the side of South Fork Road, about 2 miles from my home in the mountains of Virginia, the day after Christmas, 2007. This little black dog was shivering when I got out of the car, looking up at me with those big brown eyes that longed for someone to pet her head or scratch her behind her ear or give her a bite to eat. I had no food to give, but as I started to kneel down toward her, she jumped on my knee. Before I knew it, the door of my car was open and she was in the passenger seat, sitting straight up, looking at me as though to say, "We're going on a journey, aren't we?" "Yes, little girl, we're going on a journey." I named her Casey because my family has a penchant for giving our dogs baseball-related names, though this one was tough since she was a girl. And though my father took care of her for about 1.5 years, I vowed to her that day on the side of that back mountain road that she would be my companion when I moved to the big city, and that we would go on this journey of discovery and call together. Now it seems we're inseparable. She accompanies me to class, to work study, even to this chapel, where we have prayed together dozens of times. She's a fixture on the close, controlling the vermin population and greeting everyone she sees with the same warm look in her eyes and the same wagging tail. She runs around unleashed late at night so that she still feels like she's back home on that mountain. The incoming students knew Casey before they knew me. And Stuart Hoke, our former chaplain, always asks the same question whenever he sees me. "Where is your dog?" It doesn't matter if we're on the close or in this chapel or at Trinity Wall Street. It's always, "Where is your dog?" And this little mutt, we still don't know what she is, has taught me a lot in our time here. She reminds me of what's really important, and she's taught me to be fearless, to try new things, to venture out of my comfort zone. And without her, I'm certain I would never have met my fiancée Autumn, because I never would have gotten off this close. Casey is my companion here, but there's so many more in our community. There's Scout the girl, Scout the boy, Monk, Tekla and Hilda, Charlotte and Lenore, Bruce, Diamond Jim, Theo, Toby, Ariel, Indy, Reese, Pepper, Benji, Maggie, and a host of others. What is it about these four-legged friends of ours that brings us so much joy? And what is it about their companionship that makes us bring them with us on these long journeys of ours? Perhaps it's because they remind us, probably better than we remind ourselves, of the never-failing, eternal, and unconditional love of God. A love that knows no bounds, asks no questions, does not judge, and is always, always readily available. After I seriously bombed a midterm my junior year, you're free to speculate which one, my friend and classmate Amy Cornell saw me walking Casey with a visibly distraught look on my face. Her words still echo with me any time I go through a difficult patch. She pointed to Casey and said, "You know, she doesn't care that you failed. She loves you no matter what." Now I ask you, is that not the love of a creating, redeeming, and sanctifying God? The love that greets us at the door when we come home, no matter what kind of day we've had, high or low. This is the love that lets us practice a sermon and have a one-way conversation, even though we're pretty sure the other side's not going to speak back to us. This is the love that doesn't care whether we're male or female, gay or straight, black or white, head in the clouds Anglo-Catholic or snake belly low Protestant. It just doesn't care. Because this love just wants to be in relationship with us. That's what our four-legged friends do. They embody the love of God and they share it with us. And they invite us to share it with one another. All this talk of dogs and cats and other four-legged creatures is appropriate given the saint whom we celebrate this evening, St. Francis of Assisi, one of the most popular and admired saints, not just in our calendar, but in all of Christianity. His story is one that begins with wealth and a quest for military glory in the late 12th century. But this life ultimately left Francis empty, especially when he found himself among lepers and beggars. And so he renounced all wealth, all privilege, and formed the Order of Friars Minor, a name he chose to emphasize his desire to be numbered least among God's servants. The stories that I suspect we are all most familiar with are the stories of Francis's great love for animals, since he is, after all, the patron saint of animals. This love is seen most prominently in the Fioretti, or Little Flowers. It's a collection of legends and folklore that sprang up after Francis's death. I'll share a few snippets with you. You very well may have heard some of them before. First, there's the story of Francis and several of his companions walking along a road. When Francis stops and tells his companions, "Wait here while I go preach to my sisters, the birds." When he goes to the roadside, the birds flock to him, nest in his head and on his shoulders, and not a single one flies away until he's done preaching. There's the story of Francis and the townspeople of Gubbio who were terrorized by a wolf. Francis journeys into the hillside to find the wolf, and when he does, he makes the sign of the cross in front of the wolf and leans down and says, "Brother Wolf, you do much harm in these parts, and all of these people accuse you and curse you. But Brother Wolf, I would like to make peace between you and the people." And Francis leads the wolf back down into the town to meet the frightened citizens and facilitates a truce between the wild beast and the townsfolk. And finally, there's the tale that while on his deathbed, Francis, who is surrounded by all of his brothers, calls over not one of his human friends, but rather his donkey, and thanks him for his companionship and years of loyal service. The donkey, in return, openly weeps. Preaching to the birds, making peace with the wild beasts, thanking his four-legged companion. There are so many things that we can learn from this simple friar. Francis saw something in creation that we don't always see in this hustle and bustle, self-centered world of ours. He saw the ever-present Spirit of God, alive and well in all living things, the Spirit of love. And that Spirit, in all of its beauty, was too much for Francis to just let sit idly by. He had to be in the midst of it. He had to be known to it, and he had to make it known. And while Lesser Feast and Fast tells us that his final years were spent in much suffering of body and spirit, it also tells us that his unquenchable joy never failed. This is the joy that comes when our dogs and cats greet us. This is the joy we get when we see leaves change and begin to cover the ground, or when we're surprisingly greeted and have an impromptu conversation with someone on the street. This is the joy that comes from bearing witness to God's creation. This is joy, and it is good, and it is beautiful, and it is all around us. I'd like to invite us, just for a minute, to dream. Something I used to do a lot as a kid during sermons. Dream of a seminary, of a church, of a world where we lived out the holiness that Francis embodied, and where we intentionally look for that joy in the world around us. This is not an invitation to give up our possessions or to go preach to the birds, though you're more than welcome to go and do that. Instead, this is a somewhat audacious invitation to dream of a world where we show the extreme love that Francis showed. What if we preached God's love by giving to every person that begs from us, on the streets, in the subway, just as Francis preached to the birds? What if we were the consolers, the mediators, not the ones seeking some sort of validation in an argument, same way that Francis consoled both the wolf and the townsfolk? And what if we thanked the person bobbing and weaving through New York City traffic to get us to church on time on a Sunday morning, just as Francis thanked his donkey? Or to hit a little closer to home, what if we welcomed every single person coming onto our clothes from the Chelsea enclave and thanked them for the visit? In short, what if we treated all that we meet the same way that Casey treats me and treats you? That's a pretty audacious dream. You might wish that I'd asked you to give up all your possessions instead. But if we have the audacity to proclaim Jesus alive and in our midst here tonight, then surely we can dream of this kind of a world. What's more, I think we have the audacity to make that dream a reality. All it takes is seeing things from a different perspective, seeing the world through the same eyes as Francis and as Casey. In his bestseller, My Dog Skip, writer Willie Morris recalls growing up in rural Mississippi with a Jack Russell Terrier named Skip, whom in the book's final chapter, Willie emphatically exclaims was my brother. Some of you have even heard me call Casey my little sister, because my older one is in Kentucky. Francis of Assisi saw the birds and the wolves as his sisters and brothers. The risen one that we know to be with us here tonight invites us to see everyone from the prostitute to the Wall Street banker and every kind of other that we can think of as our brothers and sisters. What Francis and Jesus both do, what they invite us all to do, is dissolve the barriers so that all that is left is not our own self-projections, but the love of God, present in all creation, all people, all animals, all things bright and beautiful. For when we see that love, we have no need of the vanities of this world, as our collect says, for they can never fill our souls the way that God's love can. So may we see that love in the other. May we share in that love with the other, with our classmates, our professors, our dogs, our cats, the people outside that gate on 20th Street, and yes, even the people coming through that door on 9th Avenue. Everyone. I give the last word to Francis himself from his Canticle of the Sun, which we will sing in a few moments as our offertory hymn. Most high, omnipotent, good Lord, to thee be ceaseless praise outpoured and blessing without measure. Let creatures all give thanks to thee and serve in great humility. Amen.